Good?
Yeah, we are.
You tell me when to start, and I'll start.
Start.
Hey guys, this is Chris with Hit Run Steel. We're really excited today to be doing a call with Bobby Tewksbary. Bobby, in my opinion, is one of the best guys around addressing swing mechanics when it comes to the baseball swing and the softball swing. So we're really excited to have him. We want to talk to him a little bit about how he addresses teaching the mechanics of the swing to young players, the youth player, which we would say is probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 up to like 11 or 12. There's a little bit of a gap there at 13 and 14 where kids are starting to come into their body, starting to get a little bit more body control. And then there's the older kids, which are, kind of once you go through puberty, kind of 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And Bobby and I have not talked a ton about this before, but I know just being an ex-baseball player and being a pitcher, there's some control issues you have with your body as you grow. So I know Bobby probably has different things that he does for older, younger kids when it comes to mechanics. So with that being said, Bobby, we're really excited to have you. If you want to tell, our folks here on Hit Run Steel a little bit about you, a little bit about your background, and let them know who you are.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Glad to be on this video call with you. So I'm from New Hampshire, grew up in New Hampshire. I've always been very passionate about the game. And, the hitting stuff has really been a big part of my life for the last 10 or so years, where I played college ball, I played independent ball, and got to a point with the swing mechanics where, I was doing lessons, getting involved with teaching the game. And I saw a clip of Albert Pujols. He was doing the opposite of what I thought was right. So I had to check my ego and admit that he knew, or what he was doing was right, and what I thought was right was wrong. So that kind of set me off on a journey and to figure out what was going on with the swing and how to best help hitters. And there's been quite the journey since then, but that's kind of where it all started.
So one of the things that I get from your stuff is that the traditional way, and I say traditional way, it's a way that a lot of people have been taught to hit over the last, 50 to 100 years, is kind of antiquated. And I don't mean that some of it's wrong. I just mean that, you found a way to break down the swing so that the swing is, you're actually using the levers in your body. You're able to use the torque in your body. You're able to generate power, and you're able to separate some things out in your body. So can you share a little bit about what was a traditional way of teaching the swing as opposed to now what you're really focused on that would be different than that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I always try to emphasize, that this is not new. The stuff that I promote and teach is, I don't think it's new. I just think it was what the best players were doing without recognizing. And essentially what's happening now is the information is more widespread. So you saw what happened this year in the big leagues, where the record-setting home run totals, there's probably a ball issue as well, but more players are being exposed, so a higher percentage of the league is taking more effective swings. So what I mean by more effective, I look at the swing in terms of characteristics. So what is the swing plane like? What is the swing direction? Much like in golf, where you have to learn how to control the ball and the spin of the ball in golf. In baseball, we have to learn how to get our bat in the zone for the longest amount of time, with the most amount of quickness, with the most amount of adjustability. So there's all these kind of parameters that you have to consider. And when you understand how the body needs to move to create that path, you can start to train it and be as consistent as possible. So it's really about understanding, the best way to say it is the swing path and the swing plane. So we're just giving our hitters the best opportunity to drive the baseball in the air, not on the ground, because I think what most players are taught is more of a contact-based approach, where they're swinging and missing under the ball, and coaches will say, swing down, get on top, that's the adjustment. But hitters take it literally and will literally swing down. They literally take their hands forward and just chop at it. So they have less time, they have less plane and distance to work with, and it just makes hitting a lot harder. Not that it's easy, but it makes it harder.
So you said something there. You said swing path and swing plane. Can you share with folks who may not have the same understanding about hitting that you do? Can you share with them the difference? What is swing path and swing plane, and what are the two differences in the two?
Yeah. So swing path is is the direction that your barrel is going when you're making contact. So what most hitters do is they're taught to stay inside the ball, and they take their hands and they hold the barrel angle, and they try to manage the bat path so you don't get around the ball. I think most people will understand that feeling of getting around the ball, not staying inside of it. So swing path is trying to do that in a more natural way. Instead of manipulating your bat path, you're just taking a natural clean from the inside approach to the ball. Swing plane or approach angle it's just the upward or downward trajectory your bat is going into contact. So it's, if your bat is moving along this plane and contact is made here, you're going to have a slight upward path or approach angle into contact. So we're looking specifically at contact, and when you consider topspin and backspin, that's where a swing plane comes into play. So if you're swinging up but you hit the top of the ball, you're going to have topspin. If you're swinging up and hit the bottom of the ball, you're going to have backspin. So best case scenario, we're hitting the ball solid. Pitchers, I was joking around the other day. Nobody take this idea from me. I want to make T-shirts, a hitter's edition and a pitcher's edition. And the hitter's edition is going to say ground balls make me sad, and the pitcher's edition will say ground balls make me happy.
Exactly.
So it's just understanding how we're trying to hit the ball. Pitcher, you're a pitcher. You want ground balls. You don't want guys elevating and driving the ball.
Absolutely.
So it's just we're trying to compete against the pitcher.
So the traditional, I know when I was coming up, I didn't obviously do a lot of hitting being a pitcher when I was in professional baseball, but I would hear hitting coaches and I would hear guys that I played with talk a lot about, getting down to the ball and getting down and through the ball. And there was kind of a misconception, I think, that if I were going down through the ball, then that's how I was going to have the shortest path to the ball, and that's how I was going to create backspin. So everybody seemed like they were focused on going down and being quick down to the ball. And then as they got to the ball, they planed out a little bit and were able to hit the ball solid. But I think that was what I always heard. Now I hear you talking about a different path where I'm going this way on plane. And I think when I say on plane, and I'm going to speak for Bobby, when Bobby says on plane, what on plane means is the trajectory of the ball is coming in, and every ball that a pitcher throws is on a down plane, whether it's a fastball, a curveball, a slider, it doesn't matter. It's just some have less than others. So I think what Bobby's trying to say also is like, as a hitter, I want to get my barrel on the same path as the baseball is coming to me. Because if I'm swinging down and the ball's coming down, then I'm going to have two objects going down that I'm going to have to cut. And if I cut the ball, then I'm not driving the ball. Is that correct? Yeah,
the swing down thing is a little complicated, and I want to take a minute to dig into it because it's such a prevalent topic, especially at the youth levels. So swing down has value when you're facing pitchers with velocity. There's a feeling as a hitter of getting on top of the ball and hitting a line drive, or you can hit a fly ball and feel that you got on top of it, just like you can hit a fly ball that you felt that you missed under. So that's the thing that hitters need to pay attention to and have awareness of, is that feeling of getting on top, the feeling of getting under. And when you're facing a pitcher that throws really hard, and if you get into the spin rate stuff that's coming out now, high spin rate guys, they're trying to miss over your barrel. They're trying to make you swing and miss under. So if you think swing up against those guys, you might be in trouble. The same way that if you face a sinker pitcher, they're trying to miss under your barrel. So they're trying to make the ball go down and down and down. You might need to swing and miss 6 inches under the ball just to try to make contact if they're sinking it. So if we're just thinking down, we need to be more dynamic as hitters in our approach. We can't just say, I'm going to swing down against everybody, or I'm going to swing up against everybody. You have to understand your tendencies, and you have to understand your competition. So if you're a guy who pops up all the time, you probably have issues that you need to deal with that's causing you to pop up all the time, whether that's your skill in terms of accuracy, or maybe you have mechanical flaws that's making your barrel drop. There's going to be a reason why you're not hitting the ball effectively. It's not like the guys that are like hit the ball in the air. We're not talking about hitting sky-high pop-ups to the shortstop. It's driving balls into the gap. And That's one of the frustrations with the whole like hit the ball in the air movement. It's like it's new, but it's not new. It's more. I came from a background where I was taught to swing down, and I literally tried to swing down, which is not effective. So my tendency, my personal swing thought needs to be more swing upward. But
Right.
people that are more, there was Jim Tomey was on MLB Network, and his natural actions, the way his back elbow slots, the way his weight shifts, he tends to be an upward swing playing guy. So he on MLB Network, he showed a drill where he's standing on a mound swinging downhill because that's what
Right.
he needs. It doesn't mean it's right for everybody, but it's right for him, and that's kind of the point. Is you need to, every hitter needs to find what works best for them.
Right. So maybe you should have swung the other way on the mound because you have a tendency to go down. So you flip flop it and go up.
Yeah.
All right. So that's enough about mechanics. And I think the majority of the folks who are going to listen to this and talk and see this are going to be parents of younger players. So if you had some advice, either mechanically or just very simple stuff, if you had advice to parents who have kids that are 6, 7, 8, 9, in that really adolescent age of being a hitter, which I feel like is a really important time in the life of a young hitter because you're able to address some issues and you're able to have fun with them. So what would be your advice, or what would you tell a parent to look for, or how can they help their young hitter when they're at that age?
Yeah, the younger kids, I think it's so important to really foster passion in the game, or for the game. There's so many games being played at the youth levels where kids, that their emotional reaction to the game is tied to wins and losses versus like competing well or getting better. So that's just a concern that I have at the youth levels. But we need to make things. We need to help kids be passionate and learn the game. One of the biggest things with younger hitters is managing failure. There's so much failure in baseball, and specifically with hitting. So one of the best strategies that I can recommend is if a player has a bad batting practice or if they have a bad game, ask them, how close were you to being good today? Like, name 5 things you could have done better today that if you have a hitting session tomorrow, what would you do differently? And make them look at their failure in an objective way and strip away that emotion so they're not beating themselves up. Most of the time you ask a kid that, they had a bad hitting day, what's one thing you would do differently? I would focus on this part of my swing, or I would swing at better pitches, or I would try to control my bat better. They can give you specific answers without being upset and head down and bad body language and all that stuff. They can really have that strategy of dealing with that failure, which makes the game more fun because now they're going to be ready to go back to work the next day. They're going to be anxious to get better. It turns it into the game, not into this negative cycle of emotion.
Right. So taking that a little bit forward, now you're 11, 12. I kind of put the 11. I mean, me personally, I don't know how you feel about it, but from a development standpoint, 11 to 14 is where I kind of group kids. Maybe 12 to 14, because most of them some kids hit puberty earlier than others, but they're all in that range during that time where they're really starting to come into their body, and sometimes they may lose control of their body because they're growing so fast or they're doing so many different things. So during that time frame and during that age, what is your and whatever you want to say, whether it's mechanical, whether it's the mental side of it, like you talked about with the younger hitters, what's your overall advice to parents of kids during that age and during that time of development?
Yeah, it's such a weird age because, like you said, there's kids that get that baby giraffe syndrome where they can't control things, or you've got the kid that was really big, and now his home run becomes a fly ball. So it's that transition to the big field will really expose kids to strategy of the game, where they can't just outmuscle it, they can't just be bigger, they can't. The small kids are still going to struggle. They have to be patient, and that's where I think it's so important to have that passion, because they need to love the game to work through that failure and work through that transition time. So just patience, and the kid that's small, he's going to get bigger, he's going to grow. And I've had this facility for 10 years, and we see kids when they're 8 to 9 years old, and then they come out of the facility bigger than me.
Right.
It's just, we know, we have that perspective that it's gonna, their body's gonna catch up, and they're gonna turn into young men and young women. It just it takes time, and they might experience more failure than they're used to, and that's okay. That's all part of it. I saw a thing. I forget where I saw it, but it had Aaron Judge's, like, he was batting 7th when he was younger. He was like 12 or 13. He was batting 7th.
Right.
And it's like, that's such a good thing for kids to see, because you don't have to be good when you're 13, 14 years old if your goal is to be a college baseball player or a professional baseball player. It's always about the journey. It's always about where you're trying to get to. There's no moment in time where you're defined as like you're good or you're bad. You're always as good as your next at bat, as good as your next pitch. It's hard to lose that perspective.
I think that's great advice, because when as guys who were fortunate enough, like we were, to play professionally, you're one of the great things is, and one of the toughest things about it is, your job's on the line, like, for every second. I mean, like you said, your next at bat has to be your best at bat. Your next pitch has to be your best pitch. The guys, in my opinion, who, and you can take this all the way down to the youth level, kind of to the things you were talking about being positive and having energy for the game, because as a professional player, you don't have the time nor the ability to look back. Because if you look back, you get passed by, you get released, you just can't do it. Mm-hmm. And you can't let emotion run your life on the field, because if you do, it'll debilitate you as a player. So one of the great things you learn is like, I've got to focus on the next pitch, and that's the next pitch as a hitter, and that's the next pitch as a pitcher. And if I want to use my past failure, whether it be one pitch or two pitches earlier, then I can use it, but I can't let it affect me negatively. So with that being said, as a kid gets older and he starts getting into the high school age, and now, as we know, kids are getting recruited younger and younger. I mean, this year, the 2021s are the freshmen, and I know a whole bunch of them who are committing to big Division I schools. There's even 8th graders now. They're starting to dip down into the 8th grade class, into the 2022 class. So I think what's happening, too, is all of those kids that were the early developers, those are the kids that get seen. Now, when you're 15 and you're throwing 90, there's not a really good chance. I mean, God bless you, and I hope you throw 98. But there's not a really good chance at that age that you're going to be that guy. It's usually the later bloomers that get into that area and throw harder. But that being said, what's your advice to parents who, when they're getting into this age of high-end travel baseball in the summertime, what's your advice to them?
There's like this obsession with commitments, and I just see it so often where kids get burned, where they make a verbal commitment, then the coach leaves, and they have to open up the recruitment again. So there's this huge rush to make commitments. Nothing is official till you sign your letter of intent. It's just, I've seen it too many times, and I think it's really important to be honest with the coach, and find out, look into their history of commitments that they've honored. There's so much over recruiting going on. Look into the track record for the school with transfers to see how many kids go there freshman year and then bounce, because they're like, I'm never going to see the field. There's 30 other kids in my recruiting class. There's schools that do it well, and there's schools that do it in a way where it's just a cattle call, and they'll use their fall for their filter, and it's not fair to the kids. And academics should be the first priority with any recruiting process, in my belief. You got to find a school where you're going to enjoy, whether you're playing ball or not. It's just, more players are going to not play professionally. It's such a tight filter at the top. It's such a tight squeeze. So when you get these 8th graders and 9th graders that don't know enough about themselves to make a decision, if some college is talking to you and you feel good about yourself, it's understandable. It really is. But just understand, like, you can make a verbal commitment that means nothing. It really means nothing. There's nothing formal about it.
You put it on Twitter and tell everybody.
Yeah, you can put it on Twitter. You can feel good about yourself. You can, you feel cool around your friends. But until you sign that letter of intent, nothing's real. And, I hope the NCAA does something about it. I know the softball world's doing it. I think lacrosse is doing something about it.
They did. Lacrosse did.
Yeah, I think there needs to be something done, because it's not fair to the kids. And if the NCAA is all about protecting kids, in theory, then
Right.
they should step up and make a decision on that, because you're not even allowed to take an official visit. You're going to go on, like, you're an eighth grader, you're going to go on an official visit to a
Right.
college campus. If you don't even know, you don't know anything about yourself, and
No.
there's no perspective to make a decision.
No. All right. So at the same time, that age, same age, 15, 16, 17, 18. From a hitting standpoint, what's the difference? What's the difference in the mindset or in the approach or in the mechanical structure of what you should be trying to accomplish as an older player, as opposed to when you were in the younger development stage of your body?
Yeah, the mechanical need, I think, increases as your competition increases. So every hitter is going to have that athletic ceiling where they're fast enough. Some hitters, it's 80 miles an hour. Once they get to 80, they're like, whoa, this is tough. 85 is a big threshold. 90 is a big threshold. You start climbing the ladder from 90, like 90 to 93 is big. 93 to 95 is huge. So you get into these different tiers, and that's when you're going to start to need better mechanics. You're going to need to be quicker. You're going to need to be able to stop your swing later. And if your goal is to get to that next level, you have to be realistic with your abilities. And you may be hitting 600 in your high school career, and that swing's going to play at about 150 at the college level.
Right.
So you have to be realistic and seek out competition that's going to challenge you, and just really be realistic with yourself. And train at game speed, train at over game speed. So, like, you shorten up your cage and have somebody throw rockets at you that you have to be really, really quick. Things like that.
Speaking of that, I read a story, and it was about Chris Bryant, and Chris Bryant had said that he had got it from Anthony Rizzo, and Rizzo said he got it from Barry Bonds. And what they were doing was, and you've probably heard this as well, I'm sure, but they were taking the hack attack machine, which for you folks that don't know what it is, it's probably the best pitching machine you can get out there right now. And they were moving the hack attack machine up to like 50 feet, which is, I guess you would normally, I don't know what you think about it, but like if you put any pitching machine at probably 55 feet, that's probably realistically about where the release point should be, and not putting it at 60 feet. But they were putting it at 50 feet, and Bryant was turning it up like stupid. Like it was like 98 or 100 from 50 feet, and it was just wipeout sliders and nasty curveballs. And Rizzo told him, he goes, just do this for like 2 months before you get here to the big leagues, before spring training. And he had said that it just wiped him out, like it demoralized him. And then the longer he did it, the better he got at it. And then he got to the point where he was able to do some damage off the pitching machine in a cage at that particular speed and that particular distance. And then when he got to spring training and started seeing live pitching, he's like, oh man, this doesn't feel fast anymore. This doesn't feel nearly as good. So I'm thinking that's kind of what you're talking about when it comes to speeding everything up so it slows back down.
Yeah, it's being over-prepared. They say, like, if you're going to climb a mountain, to be so over-prepared that it's easy.
Right.
So same concept there. You're overwhelming yourself with speed and movement. And, when you do that, if you can make that your normal, it's like, imagine if you're a high school player, you could go back and play Little League.
Right.
You'd crush it. You'd never make it out.
Right.
It's the same kind of concept. If your skill level is greater than what your competition is, you're gonna do all right.
Right.
Pitchers are getting scary though. I had a conversation last night. This pitch design stuff.
Right.
It's bad news for hitters.
The pitch tunneling stuff's really cool. Like I've heard a little bit about it. Obviously, it's getting your hand to come through at the same spot with every pitch. And I used to play with hitters who would say they could see a little bit of this and a little bit of this, and so I think it's just becoming really high tech. And I think you can get caught up in it, and it's good stuff to a degree. But at the end of the day, it's still about being able to from a hitting standpoint, which is what we're talking about today. It's still being able to get your barrel to the baseball as quickly as you can and square the baseball up and hit it on the barrel and hit it on the sweet spot of the bat. If you're hitting balls on the sweet spot of the bat, you've got 80% of it covered, I would think. Maybe I'm being a little hefty on the 80%, but I just watch young hitters, and you may see 10 swings and you may see 2 that are hit on the sweet spot. So you could maybe elaborate a little bit more on that.
I mean, the skill of hitting The mechanics are definitely overcooked at the moment. There's going to be a little market correction. There's going to be more
Right.
focus on skill and on the mental side. But mechanics matter. Just like your sleep matters. Just like your diet matters. Just like uh, having a good strength and conditioning program matters. Everything goes into it. But the skill part, I mean, you get the barrel to the ball on time.
Right.
That's all. It's everything you do is building up to that. So,
Right.
I have a lot of concern right now for hitters that build their swings on like underhand flips, especially guys that are swing up guys, and they're just
Right.
swinging straight up, and the ball's being flipped in there like a slow pitch softball, and the ball's not flat, so they're matching the plane,
Right.
but it's not a realistic plane without realistic quickness, and there's gonna be guys that build a swing that they're just hitting lots of. I mean, deep fly balls are outs.
Sure.
If you're strong enough
Sure.
for it to go out, that's cool. But to hit a ball that high, there's limits. Once you get over that like 35-degree launch angle, you gotta hit it really hard to hit it out. You have to hit it really hard, like 100 plus. So
Right.
it's just it's just concerns with that, and there's smarter ways to train. And like you can use the technology, like pitchers have their TrackMan and they get their spin rates and their tilt and their effective spin and all that stuff. We have hit tracks, we have diamond kinetics, we have different things that we can use to measure our swings, to measure our performance, to combat. It's competition. It's the war,
Sure.
the war between hitter and pitcher.
Sure. So we talked a lot about mechanics. What are is there a different mental approach? And I mean mental approach to me, there's two different kinds of mental approaches. There's the mental approach of practicing or training, and then there's the mental approach of games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a pitcher, those are kind of two different things. And as a hitter, I'm assuming those are maybe some similarities, but a lot of differences as well. So from the very young age, from that early adolescent age to the middle of your teens, you just get into your teen years and to the older time. What do you talk to hitters about the mental approach? Number one, with training or practicing, and then the mental approach to game situations.
Yeah, I've been investing a lot of time into learning about this type of stuff recently. There's a time and a place to think about what you're doing. And then there's a time and a place to set yourself up to just react and just base things on feel. And I won't get too deep into like left brain, right brain stuff, but if you ask any good hitter, any good pitcher, any good athlete, when they're performing at their best, what are you thinking about? Like, what are you thinking about? They'll be like, nothing. And it has to do with how you're thinking, what part of the brain you're tapping into, and it's really interesting to me, and I think that I'm going to try to talk about it a lot more, but it's pretty heavy stuff. But essentially, like if you're thinking about what you're doing, you hear that paralysis by analysis thing.
Right.
Your brain literally can't send signals fast enough to perform in the constraint of hitting or any athletic movement. Your brain literally can't do it fast enough. We're talking about milliseconds. It's not fast enough, and you have to get into that. You hear that like fight or flight mode where your instincts take over, and that's essentially what you need to learn how to do in the batter's box, where you shut down your logical thinking of like, here's what I'm going to do right now, and you have to get into your senses, and you have to be able to just shut down your brain and just react. And it's really hard to do that, and I think you have to practice it. Again, every hitter's going to have their tendencies. Some hitters are just pure feel and they can't think at all. So if they're making mechanical changes, they can't think about their body, and you have to find ways to work with those guys. But it's dealing with the brain. It's very dynamic. For me, it's incredibly intriguing, and there's a lot of exciting opportunities with that.
Do you think that with how pervasive mechanical training is now in the swing, that's all you hear talked about from everywhere. I mean, from MLB Network to Little League to the guy who never played, who's giving lessons at some facility somewhere. You name it, people are doing mechanical stuff. One of the things that I found, and my son's 16, I found like being around him and being around players and being around travel baseball, all these guys and all these players all have swing coaches, especially the guys who are playing at a higher level. They all have their hitting guy. Mm-hmm. And what you see, and I see it all the time, I sit in the dugout and I watch them on deck and they're doing all these mechanical cues. You see them like they'll be looking at their hands, or they're watching their hands load, or they're thinking about their hip, or they'll come back and they'll pop up and they're like, my hip flew open too early or whatever. And I'm like, how do you know that? Like, you're actually thinking about that, because if you're thinking about that, you're not going to hit. You're not going to hit. So do you think that with the explosion of mechanical stuff, when is the time and place to shut down thinking about that in a game? Can you do it on the on-deck circle? Can you do it before the game? Can you do it, or should you just blank out like you were talking about, which I agree that's the only way you can really perform at your highest level. When is the time frame of all that stuff to happen?
I think right as you're getting in the batter's box. I think for myself personally, I would always give myself permission for one physical thought. It was usually like a timing-based thing where I'm going to get to a certain spot at a certain time, whether that's feel, whether that's physical position, whatever that is. So that's in the batter's box, like one thing, like just like a pitcher. If you're throwing a sinker and you got to get to a certain release point, that's going to be where your focus is.
Right.
But when you're getting so hyper focused on mechanics, like if you popped up, it's because you popped up. You missed under the ball.
Right.
Mechanics is like it's like a cop out. It's like a built-in excuse when it's really like you just weren't good enough on that pitch. And
exactly.
There's a missing element of just competing. Like, refuse to get beat by the pitcher. Like, you're not going to get me out. And when you get to first base or second base after a single or double, like, you earn that. Don't go back to the dugout complaining about your swing. Like, you should have earned your swing already.
Right.
When it's time to perform, just compete. And as soon as you step into that batter's box, I mean, you can have thoughts, you can have routines that you're getting. You want to talk about like neural pathways and motor skills, and that's fine. Do your stuff in the on-deck circle. Do stuff between pitches even. But when you get in that batter's box, see the ball. Like, flush everything out. See the baseball. Give your brain the opportunity to see the ball and process that information as quickly as possible. And if you've earned your swing, it's going to show up.
Are there, in your mind, are there different approaches based upon the count you're in? Are there different approaches? And you always hear, if you play baseball for any given amount of time, you'll always hear, 2-0 count's the best count to hit in, or 3-1 count's the best count to hit in. As a pitcher, I was scared to get into those counts because you're forced to throw whatever you can. Most of the time it's a fastball, especially for young kids, and it's a fastball down the middle. So as a hitter, it's coming, and you got to gear up and get ready. So are there different swings for a 1-2 count, a 2-0 count, a 3-1 count, a 2-2 count in your mind?
Yeah, so at the major league level, the strikeout is less of a big deal. Where those guys, if they make contact and can do damage, it's more valuable. Because most of the time, if they put the ball in play, on average, you hit 300. So there's different style hitters, of course, but major league level, they don't mind the strikeout because they'd rather take an aggressive swing and try to hit a double than take a weak swing and roll over. Those guys are the most skilled players on the planet. So I think younger kids should be really upset with themselves if they strike out. Not like emotional slamming stuff, but they shouldn't be striking. Like a 12-year-old kid or a high school player should not have the strikeouts are okay mentality. Like, if you're striking out, that means you're not good at that level.
Right.
And there's thresholds with everything, but if there's going to be approaches based on, like, if I was throwing a soft throwing lefty and your tendency is to be early, you're going to think opposite field. If a guy pitches on the inside corner, you may need to adjust your plan for that. If he's got his out pitch is something you can't handle, you better jump on something early. So it's
Right.
really just being prepared and paying attention to any pitcher that you're facing and just understanding the situation.
So if you're a 16-year-old kid or a 15-year-old kid and you're playing travel baseball, and that didn't have to be travel baseball. It could be high school baseball. It can be anything. But if I'm a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid and I'm in the dugout and I'm a hitter, and the pitcher comes out in the first inning to go warm up, and say you're hitting fifth or sixth,
Yep.
are you watching every single pitch that he throws? Are you watching every warm-up pitch? Are you watching every pitch that he throws to the hitters in front of you? Are you watching, if you don't get up until the second inning, are you watching every single pitch he throws? Every pitch he throws, are you watching it?
I mean, what you're there to play a baseball game? What that's playing the game. The game is. I mean, I'm looking for spin. I'm not just looking at what pitch he's throwing. I'm trying to pick up on spin tendencies. Like, does he throw a two-seamer or a four-seamer? Or is his changeup sloppy? Does he throw a two-seam changeup and a four-seam fastball? You know, what's the breaking ball look like? I'm looking for, like, does he hook the wrist at all? Does he do something different on a changeup? I'm talking to teammates when they come back in, asking what stuff looks like, what the movement profiles are. You know, is it 12-6? Is it more sweeping? That should be completely normal. Completely normal. And if you're not doing that, I don't know if you even like the game. You're not even playing the game.
Right. Yeah. I mean, those kind of things, I think for young players, you know, I mean, heck, it's different. It's difficult for a 9-year-old to sit in the dugout and look at some kid out there spinning his breaking ball. I mean, that's hard to do. I mean, your attention span when you're that age is not built for that.
Sure.
But that being said, you know, if a parent can talk to their kid in a constructive way and say, hey, look, you know, when you're there, just start watching the guys pitching to you. You know, you may be able to pick up something that may help you, and then as they get older, it becomes something that becomes a little bit more natural because, you know, like you know, you're sitting in the dugout in a professional setting, you know, and I'm sitting there as a pitcher and I'm not pitching that day, and I hear all the hitters come in whining and crying because they can't see the spin or they can't do this or they can't do that. But it's a constant communication. Everybody's communicating with each other. You know, you may have hitters going over and asking the coach, like, what do we have on this guy? And they're giving them charts. They're giving them, in these days, I'm sure it's completely different than when I played. You know, they're able to see video. They're able to see everything really quickly. They're trying to process as much information as they can, as quickly as they can to give them an edge. So, to your point, I think if kids at the high school age where your brain really starts to develop, you can sit there and say, hey, it's important. I need to be in this game. I need to find out. Even if you're not good enough to do anything with the information, it's only going to help you in your life anyway.
Or how about just watching baseball games on TV?
Yeah.
That's something I ask all the kids that I work with. Like, did you watch a game last night? What was the pitcher's out pitch? How was he getting guys out? Just paying attention. You start to pick up on pitch sequences and how guys get people out. And you know, I grew up watching TBS, so I was like, the Braves were, it was before MLB TV and ESPN, and it was like Sunday Night Baseball, Wednesday Night Baseball on ESPN, but TBS, every night the Braves were on. And you watch Greg Maddux, you watch Tom Glavine and Smoltz and Avery and Wohlers coming out of the pen. That's what I grew up every single night. If I didn't have a game, I was watching baseball. It was just, I stopped playing video games because I wanted to pay attention and learn the game. And you know, you see those guys consistently, and you pick up on, you learn the game. That's what.
Yeah.
That's what.
Oh, there's no doubt. I always tell kids, you know, I always tell hitters coming from a pitching side of it. I'm like, every pitcher has a pattern. They all develop patterns because there's certain, you know, for me, I did not throw changeups to right-handed hitters. I only threw changeups to left-handed hitters because I was too afraid my changeup was going to tail back over the plate. I had a changeup that would really bite and go down, but as a right-hander, a lot of times I would pull it and it would just sneak back across the plate, and guys would, they'd start. I could see their mouth start watering as the pitch is coming to home plate.
Yeah.
So I didn't throw changeups to right-handed hitters. I didn't throw back foot sliders to left-handed hitters because I was too afraid to do it. My slider was not good enough to be able to throw that pitch. Yeah. I would backdoor it or I would bounce it. That's it. So if you sit there and watch me pitch long enough, you would know that if I'm throwing a curveball to you as a right-handed hitter, I'm either going to bounce it or I'm throwing it for a strike. And if only time I'm going to bounce is if there's two strikes. So you know you're going to get a strike out of a curveball with left. I mean, and I had some really good years doing some really cool stuff, but I had patterns.
Yeah.
Every pitcher has them.
Mm-hmm.
They all.
And that's, I mean, so much of that is learning what, like, looking up, looking down, understanding where you need to see the ball for it to finish where you want it to finish. And that's experience.
What do you tell hitters? I've heard a couple of different theories behind this. Where are a hitter's eyes as a pitcher is getting into his delivery and getting into his release point?
Yeah, I'm a wide focus to narrow focus guy, so just kind of see the big picture and then zoom in. It's weird to think about if you're in the box and you're actively trying to do it. It's very, you get into that, you're thinking too much.
Right.
So it's just more kind of look. I would kind of look out and just see the pitcher in general. I wouldn't focus on anything in particular. And then as he was getting ready to release the ball, that's when you're really trying to key in on fingers, the hook, showing more of the wrist. There's turnover. What kind of movement is happening. I pitched when I was younger too, so I knew what I was trying to do when I was throwing the ball, so that helped me try to understand and interpret what was going on. But I think that's where, like when you're on deck, you notice those things. When you're in the dugout, you notice those things. But that wide focus, I've read that you can't have that narrow focus for a long period of time. So you have to kind of save it and then zoom in. I would also, on deck, I read this somewhere, it's like a eye warm-up routine where I would look at something short. So I would put your hand in front of your face and look at your fingers and then zoom out to like the 405 sign in center field. And you can kind of feel your eyes refocus and then bring it back to your fingers and then zoom back out. And you can feel your eyes like go out, come back in, go out, come back in as a warm-up for depth perception and just to be able to track things faster.
That's cool.
It's just something I would do on deck that just...
What's the thought process for a hitter in between pitches? So what am I doing? What's the optimal thing for me to be doing in between pitches as a hitter when I step out of the box and step back in?
Yeah, I think there's differences where some guys are just pure approach and playing the cat and mouse game. Rock, paper, scissors, what's he going to throw next?
Right.
And some guys, for me personally, if I fouled a pitch back that I felt like I should have hit, I would take a swing to try to correct it, to try to feel what was missing. So maybe it's like reminding yourself to keep your front shoulder in on a breaking ball or thinking more on top or whatever that physical cue is that wasn't right. And it's not like an overly like logic driven, like a mechanical thing. It's feel it outside of the box and then kind of have that stored when you get back in.
Some of the best hitters that I played with that I got to know and listen to them talk about hitting, which was Chipper, Andrew Jones, and Griffey Jr. when I was with the Mariners for a year, and different guys like that. The elite of the elite, not even your average big league guy, but your Hall of Fame type guys. And the one thing that kind of stuck out to me about those guys is that there was zero mechanical things going on with them, like zero, like nothing. It was only like, Chipper hit a home run, and he hit a home run on a fastball, and he came back in the dugout, and he had fouled the first fastball off late. He hit a line drive like right over the third base dugout left-handed. Mm-hmm. And he came back in, and he said, I knew I was going to get him because I fouled that first one off on purpose to be late so that he'd throw me another one.
Yeah.
And those guys actually thought that way. And those guys could actually do that stuff. And when people hear that, they're like, no, that's BS. You can't do that. Mm-hmm. No, you can't. People did it.
Yeah.
When I played with Maddox, he told me, we were in a little side story. He told me we were in Arizona playing the Diamondback. And we were flying to New York to play the Mets, and he was pitching the first day. And he said, hey, you want to know what the first 5 hitters are going to do off of me and what pitch they're going to hit? And I'm like, yeah, okay. And he told me, and it happened.
I believe it.
He did that all the time. Wes Helms was playing third base in a spring training game. Ball comes around, throws it to Maddox, and Maddox says, hey, get ready. The first 3 ground balls are coming to you. First 3 ground balls go to Wes at third base, and he throws them out. And he was a savant. But there are guys, those elite guys, that's why it goes back to what you were saying earlier. You cannot try to be the baseball player that the Mike Trouts and the Chipper Joneses and the Andrew Jones, those guys are unicorns. They don't exist, but they do. So you can't try to model what you do and your thought processes after them. We're all of the rest of us are just dudes, and we got to work, and we got to figure it out. That's why I wanted to bring you on here today, because you're so into all this stuff, and you're so in, and it's your day-to-day grind of trying to figure out mechanically what the kids need to do, emotionally, mentally. Heck, you're even talking about left brain and right brain, which for most baseball players would blow your brain up.
Yeah.
You know, so you're really trying you're devoting your life to trying to make hitters better and to try to get them to be the kid that can square the baseball up consistently. You know, and I applaud you for it, because there needs to be more people who have the purity of it and are not just out to rip people off. They're not out to scam people. They're not some guy sitting in a facility somewhere who didn't play anything and doesn't know anything, and he's charging these people a lot of money. Which brings me to something else. How do I know as a parent that I'm not being scammed by my hitting instructor, or how do I pick a hitting instructor? How do I know that guy knows what he's talking about?
Yeah, it's tough, because if you've got Twitter and you've got an internet connection, you can get access to all the latest terms, all the latest jargon. You put on MLB Network, you can talk launch angle. Something that is just really obvious to me, like when I get around other high level instructors, guys that are like really doing things, the more you learn, the less you know. Like you realize, like, you know, I start reading about the brain, and it's like, well, do I need to reconsider everything I'm doing right now, because maybe I'm not doing it right? And it exposes you to different ways of thinking and different concepts. And the guys that, if you think you got it figured out, watch out. Those are the guys where you need to. It's really. I've had moments in the cage where I'm trying to work through some information, and I don't feel confident as an instructor, because I'm looking at this kid and I'm in the middle of trying to learn something, and I'm like, am I able to help this kid right now? Because I'm trying to sort it out in my head, and I don't know if what I'm telling this kid is right. And it can be tough if you're an instructor that's always trying to learn, and I love with like doctors, they call it a practice. It's not a perfect. It's not like we got it all figured out. As soon as you think you have it figured out, I think it gets boring, and I think you get exposed at that point. But there's things that you can always lean on. Like I try to do as much experimenting on my own now. Like when I was first starting to learn stuff and trying to figure it out, that's when it was like, I don't know. There's moments where like I don't know if I believe in this stuff. This is kind of weird. But you have to have like a system. You have to have things that you rely on, and things that you know aren't going to change, like some of the universal stuff. And you know, I like to use technology as a way to create awareness. You know, like something like hit tracks. You let a kid hit on hit tracks, and they take a swing and they look where the ball's going, and they're like, oh, I don't like that. I want to hit the ball to the outfield. Or like they roll over 17 times in a row, and you're like, are you having fun? Is this good? Like, you think you're doing what you want to be doing right now. So technology can create that level of awareness. There's so much more to a hitting instructor than just mechanics. If you're doing things that are extreme, I think right now it's weird. For a few years I was like on the extreme fringe, and now there's people that are like way beyond me. So it's weird because like locally I'm still looked at as like a weird fringe guy, but on the internet I'm not fringe anymore. So it's a weird dynamic that I'm experiencing right now. I think when you get to extremes, if the hitter's bought into it and they're passionate about it, I mean, it's like the Inception thing. Like, can you plant that seed in the kid's head?
Right.
If the kid's performing well in a game, and they're paying attention and they're engaged in their own development, so much of what you're doing with the kid, the things that they're like. I was having a conversation the other day. Like, how do you make a kid feel cared for? Like, how do you build trust with the kid? Like, if there's an instructor that's investing their time and they're making that kid feel good and they're helping them be confident and they're leaving a facility with something that they believe in, they feel like they're making progress. It's not like you're buying a T-shirt off a rack. Like, there's a lot more to it than just the swing. What percent is the swing mechanics of that equation in terms of like relationship between a hitting coach and the hitter? Is it 10%? Is it 20%? I think if it's like a 95% mechanics thing, I'd be worried about that. If you're just paying somebody coming in once a week for a 30-minute lesson and you're not hitting on your own, you're wasting your time and your money. That's one thing that I hate is when kids are using hitting instructors for reps.
Right.
If you're going in there and you're working on stuff and you're grinding through some failure and you need another set of eyes, that's one thing. But if you're just relying on somebody and it's like this weekly hitting, you can make pretty solid money doing just fill up your schedule with lessons.
Right.
If that's what you want. And we do stuff in all small hitting groups because we want dynamic between hitters. We got pro guys hitting with 12-year-olds right now.
That's awesome.
If you go out back, then they're working together and the younger kid's watching the older kid, and that type of dynamic is really fun, and that's what we like to have here. There's a time and a place for private stuff. I don't think it should be like, I got my weekly lesson, I got to go to my guy to get right.
Right.
If you're relying on somebody in that capacity, you're not going to be the goal for the coach, for the hitter, and for the coach is for that hitter to be their own best coach. Not a crutch. You don't want a crutch. You want to be your own man. You want to be your own player.
Right. That's awesome. Well, that's good stuff, man. Well, that's all the time we have for today. We want to thank Bobby for coming on Hit Run Steal and sharing his philosophy and sharing his experience and sharing everything that he knows about hitting. We're going to have a link below, and it's going to have a direct link to Bobby's site. You're going to be able to get everything that Bobby offers. I think he's got 4 or 5, is that right? 4 or 5 ebooks or books that you offer on your website?
Yeah, I've got my main book is on lead swing mechanics. I've got some other video series. I've got a website called Hitting Daily, and then like video lessons and stuff. I actually have a new book coming out very soon. It's final edits going on right now and cover design. That's cool. More about. We're still working on the title, but it's more about it's tying in the mental approach and everything that, like, what makes a good hitter beyond mechanics, because the mechanics, they're important, but it's like the icing on the cake.
Now, you also have video lessons as well, right? People can go on your website. They can go through the link and they can get on the website and they can get a video lesson from you. Right. Just tell them a little bit quickly how that works.
Yeah, so you just take video, send it to me, and then I'll break it down. And usually it's, depending on the swing, 5 to 10 minutes where I'll do a voiceover and pull up other hitters to show you kind of what's going on with mechanics. And then I include a few articles that provide information that's more like the learning side of it for perspective. And just try to help out with giving you guidance and get that awareness going for things that you need to look for the next time you hit.
Now, also, do you have a subscription model as well, where people can pay you monthly to be a part of your program and they get content delivered to them? Do you offer that?
Yeah, my Hitting Daily website it's a membership website where we put out articles. I'm actually bringing some more writers on for that, which is exciting, to get more voices, more perspective. But yeah, that's where I do all my writing now. All my content goes out through that website. It's there's probably 275 or so articles on there right now. That as soon as you sign up, it's like Netflix, where you sign up, you got access to everything. You get everything new that's released.
Well, everybody who's watching this, I would really encourage you in some form or fashion, whether it's the video lesson, whether it's the content on Tewks Hitting, whether it's the Hitting Daily. There's so many things that Bobby offers, and I know my opinion probably doesn't mean a whole lot, but Bobby's probably one of the best guys out there right now. As you can tell, listen to Bobby. He's a smart dude. He knows what he's doing. He's not in it to rip anybody off. He's there to help everybody and just go and absorb everything he has. I know that if you do that, and you have a son or a daughter, whether it's softball or baseball, they'll become a better hitter, and they'll have more fun doing it. Because at the end of the day, whether or not you're an instructor or not, or whether or not you're a parent or not, what you want is your kid to have fun. You don't want to be the kid. You don't want to be the parent who's the overbearing nut job, and their kid doesn't enjoy playing sports. I mean, that's what sports is enjoying it and being the best you can be at it. And guys like Bobby are doing it for the right reasons, where they're out there trying to help kids be better and trying to have a positive experience and trying to be good at what they're doing. So again, we want to thank you, Bobby, for coming on. I know your time's valuable, but I really appreciate it. And if there's anything Hit Run Steal can do for you in the future, let us know. All right?
Will do. Thank you very much. I appreciate being on.
All right, Bobby. See you.
Take care.